back is this one,
Okay.
forward's that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And if not, just keep clicking, it goes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Will Kruer. I am co-owner and COO of PeopleFirst. We are a fractional HR firm. So basically, we help small businesses when they hit that growth stage where their people side is getting a little bit more complex. And so their leaders are spread thin with doing things like, hiring the right team, having an intentional culture, and leadership development for employee engagement, and making sure that everything is running within compliance, but also with tact. So, and I say we because I have a business partner, her name's Alexandra Bowden, and I have a team of 6 consultants where each person has their own specialty to plug in to our clients' needs. So our clients have a full array of specialists, without having to hire an internal team. And a lot of people ask me how I got into HR, and this is kind of my story, my journey, is I really just fell into it. I actually started in operations and finance. I really enjoy the business management of things. I enjoy tinkering with things, improving processes, making things better. And so I started out in finance and operations, but I wanted a new challenge. And so I had applied to a different finance role and went on an interview. And when I arrived at that interview, I discovered I wasn't interviewing at the company that I had applied to. I was interviewing with a third-party recruiter. And I didn't even know that third-party recruiting was an industry. I was really young. I had no idea that that was even a thing. I had graduated college in the heart of the recession, and so the idea that companies needed help finding talent was kind of foreign to me. So I meet with this third-party recruiter, and they told me that I would be a good recruiter. So I decided, I would give it a try. It sounded fun. Once I got into it, I realized it was not at all what I had expected. And I think if I did know what it was, I wouldn't have done it. So my naivety was kind of to my benefit in that sense. But once I got into it, I found that I was really good at it. And in my region, I was the only person that did the job role that I did. And they ended up sending me around the region to train new hires on some of the successes that I had had. And so I was really good at it because I had found this passion for connecting people. And so with my original passion of working with businesses and solving needs and seeing operational processes and making things better, the businesses and clients that I was working for had this gap in their systems of they needed a particular person, they didn't have that person, and so I was solving that need, which was very rewarding to me. The other side of it that I found to be very rewarding was helping individuals with their career path and their career journey, because I don't know if you picked up on this, but I went to meet for a finance interview and I ended up taking a job in recruiting that I knew nothing about. So what that tells me is that I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I was good at. I didn't know where my skills applied to. And I think there's a lot of professionals that feel that exact same way. And so I found this passion for helping people uncover their career identity and helping them navigate opportunities that they didn't even know existed. Because a lot of my placements were candidates that weren't a fit on paper but had the transferable skills. And so I still get those thank you notes today of where they ended up and how fulfilled they are with the journey that they're on. So I found all of that to be very fulfilling, and with my original goal of becoming a business owner, recruiting was an opportunity for me to easily open my own business. And I say easily, meaning that I didn't have a need for capital overhead, right? Because as a recruiter, you just need a computer and a phone and your skill set, and then if you're really fancy, maybe some software. So I was able to open up my own recruitment firm, and that was right about the same time that I met my now partner, Alexandra. And her and I really connected on solving a business need, because even though I was really good at recruiting, the model always made me scratch my head, where when you hire a recruiter, you pay them a fee for a person. And so for me, from a business standpoint, that didn't really make sense, because if you had an open role like a financial analyst and you pay a fee for a person and that person grows within the role, they move up in the company, that role's still open again. Or if that person leaves the company altogether, that role's open again. So, and you can mitigate turnover, and that's something that we help our clients with, but you can't eliminate it. Any healthy business is always going to have turnover. You're going to have people moving on. You're going to have people that move for family. You're going to have people moving up in the business, new roles that open up with growth. And so what Alexandra and I really discovered was solving the need of the open role as opposed to placing people who are dynamic into it. And so what we really do is build up businesses with their processes, and we embed ourselves with their internal team to solve those problems, then eventually work ourselves out of a job, in 6 to 12 months by setting up those processes. So instead of, people paying a one-time fee for a Band-Aid, what Alexandra and I really connected on was, helping those businesses through their processes and through their people support. And so that's really the journey that her and I went on, and we merged together. We've been working together since 2020, but we merged together officially in 2022. And so, we added a team of 6 consultants, and it's been really beneficial to have that business partner. And I think as a business owner, a lot of you understand it's a very lonely lifestyle, and it is a lifestyle, it's not a job. And so having that support from a partner is something that I found to be really beneficial. So that's my partner, Alex. We went to a client meeting in Tucson, and that's where that is. And then we have a team of, this is our virtual holiday party. We're fully remote, so a lot of people are located in Ohio. That's where I started the business. But we've always been fully remote, and so what we do to really cultivate our culture is having these virtual events. So for our holiday party, we had a gingerbread making contest, and it's something like, I'm sure you all attended a Zoom meeting. It's so hard to be engaged, and especially in a large group, because you have different conversations happening. We actually have a virtual office where you can be in the same room, but you can whisper to other people, so it's easy to just have a quick conversation with somebody in the same room. But anyways, we had a gingerbread making contest, and that was an easy way for us all to just hang out and have that kind of culture and meeting in a virtual space. So.
So that's your first question. Who won? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. I think it was, so Rain here, she got the prize for the worst one. Hers, she didn't understand the assignment, and so, and I think hers ended up falling apart, and it was just a rubble of gingerbread. But I believe it was Brianna had the best one, so yeah, I wish I had a picture of those, but yeah.
Well, thank you. Let's give him a round of applause. So now we're going to open it up. So you guys, he gave us a brief storytelling there, but I know you guys probably have a lot of questions for him. So feel free, raise your hand and ask him some questions. There we go, in the back.
Team dynamic and culture fit are probably the hardest parts to get right. How do you make sure that you understand the culture that you're putting somebody into and that they're going to fit?
Yeah, so that is the number one issue that businesses have, is when they're hiring, they're trying to match a resume to a job description. And then they go through the interview process and they're like, none of these candidates are a fit, And I think that all of us can relate. If you have siblings, you and your sibling, you grew up in the same house, most of you. You went to the same church, you went to the same school, you had the same parents, but you and your sibling are completely different people. And candidates are the same way. They might have the same resume and the same journey, but they're completely different people. So to answer your question about how do you uncover culture fit, with our clients, we have a proprietary game that we play. It's about a 2.5-hour session, and it uncovers the behaviors behind what the organization is. So a lot of organizations will have a sign on the wall that says, we're proactive and we're fun and we're this and we're that. It's but that doesn't mean anything because everyone defines that differently. You could have a sign that says we're client-centric, and one person could say that means I take phone calls at 10 p.m. and another person could say that's invading my boundaries. So we don't focus on words, we focus on the defining behaviors behind those words, and we help the company understand what they think their culture is and then what it actually is. And then with that, that's how we build out our interview process for our client of what kinds of questions are you asking, what types of tonality are you asking, and then developing a candidate persona for how you're branding that role so that hopefully candidates will self-select out and the right candidate will apply or the right candidate will come into your process. And then once they're in your process, we have a whole structure for those behavioral-based interview questions, the culture-based interview questions to try and identify that. So, but it is a lot of time on the front. I think to answer your question, on the front end of sourcing and building all that, it's a lot of time spent that a lot of people just kind of overlook.
So, Airedale did, sorry I didn't mean to
That's okay.
double up here, but they just, it's a $1 billion weapons manufacturing company, and they made a video from people they didn't like that worked at their company that were bad fits, telling everybody why they shouldn't work there. So what they're doing is thinking the opposite tack. They're showing you got to get dirty, you got to be out in the field, you're solving real world problems. And I hated, at the end of it, and I hated doing all
Yeah.
There's
Yep.
not too many.
Yeah, and that's excellent. I haven't heard of that, so that's a good idea. Go ahead.
So, how do you find people? How do you find right people? And do you help companies to keep these people, like stay with them?
Yeah, so our biggest, I would say our biggest value with our clients is the retention piece. So we're a people systems management as a service. So we help, with how are you managing your people? How are you leading your people? How are you developing your leaders so that your employees wake up thinking, I only want to work for, that person? Because that's how you really cultivate engagement. And so we start, with that. But in terms of finding people, you have to do everything. You have to have appropriate branding so that the right person's attracted to you, and so that when you reach out to a candidate, they already have answered the question of, do they want to work for you? Because we do a lot of outreach, networking, events, cold calling, email, messaging, but you can't do all that alone. You have to have a brand behind it, because when someone receives your phone call or when they meet you at an event, they're not going to ask you all the questions, especially the younger generation. The younger generation is not going to pick up the phone. They're going to answer their own questions without asking you. So they're going to go and they're going to look at people's Facebook profiles, their LinkedIn profiles. They're going to determine, do I want to work with that team? Do I want to work with those people? They're going to look at your website. They're going to look at all those things. So you have to have that already aligned for your target candidate, so that when you do connect with them through all those mediums that I just mentioned, they've already have that question answered, and that 90% of the work is already done, that they've already decided that they do want to work, or they are interested and they do want to respond to you. Go ahead.
Did you have a question? Oh.
No.
So, just hearing you, I think that's a really great thing that you're doing to help the businesses with what you're doing. I've been in restaurants and like pretty much for 16, 17 years, and it's been like such a hard thing of like having people, you get people and you grow them into the position, and then you have like, oh man, now I gotta look for a cook, now I gotta look for a server. But through the years I've learned like a certain system, like, hey, you know what, keep them, I had a certain way of like always keeping that position filled, and then keeping my people longer. At every place I went to, I realized you have to make sure you have the right people in the building. And every place I went to, I realized it was more of a manager thing than it was the worker thing. So you're pretty much going in, for me to understand it, you're going in and teaching the people how to run their business, or kind of cultivate their culture to get the correct people and keep them longer, correct?
Yeah, we don't tell our clients what their or we don't build a culture for our clients. We help them identify what their culture is and use it as a tool. But I worked in food and beverage for 7 years as well, and so it is like high turnover, very difficult place to be with employees. And so, taking that approach, like what you said, how your managers are treating them, how they're being engaged is what you have to start with in order to mitigate that turnover and get more engagement.
Yeah, that's such a need what you're doing. So
Yeah.
a lot of
Thank
people,
you.
they struggle, but that's really the main thing in every business is have the right people. So.
Yeah.
And also, quick comment. So usually the resume that they have, sometimes it might be absolutely opposite what the person is.
Yeah.
So, and how do you handle this part? How you can find the right person when the resume is not brilliant?
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Well, and that's the interesting thing is that as someone who's in talent sourcing, I talk to candidates all day, and it's often you get a resume and you haven't met the person and you're so excited because they seem like such a good fit and they turn out to be a dud. And then whereas you get another resume and it's not exactly what you're looking for, but you might see something on it that interests you, and you connect with that candidate and they turn out to be the best fit and the one that the company likes the best and is retained. So how you identify that early on is a lot of what I said, like developing that candidate persona. So like digging deep into what are transferable skills that we could identify from this resume. What's different language that we should be looking for that's not going to be in the job description that is part of who the company is, and also getting involved in groups of where your target candidate's going to be. So like Facebook groups, like moms groups. We've had such a success with moms groups when we're trying to network with candidates, like moms or stay-at-home parents in general who are returning to the workforce. Like they had a 15-year-long career. They stayed at home with the kids for 5 years. Now they're returning to the workforce. So like getting involved in thinking about where is the person who's going to do the best in my company, like where do they hang out, and then being involved in that space. So I saw a few hands over here. Yeah.
Get him in the back, because I think he
Yeah.
had his hand up.
Yeah. I've seen a few over here. We help you identify it, yeah. So, and we, right, yep. Yeah, our smallest client is 8 people, and that's where culture is the most important, obviously. You know, that's where things are like the most tightly knit. So for a one-person entrepreneur, you know, there's still a culture there, and that culture is more your brand, you know, for your clients and your service, and that's what's going to attract. If you are going to grow, that's what's going to attract those future applicants. Is like, what's your service, what's your brand, who are you, and already having that in place and, you know, public facing. So.
So you're, obviously you work with a lot of different industries, or different, you know, fields, but are there any common themes that you find in between, you know, the different industries that are kind of common that, you know, companies should really start with or focus on?
Yeah.
To kind of build out. I mean, I know everybody's different, every culture is different, but is there recurring themes across each industry that kind of
Yep.
intersect?
Well, I think a recurring theme in terms of challenges between any industry is like everybody always says they have such a hard time finding good work, you know, good workers and good talent. So I think that's a common theme. But in terms of culture, I think the most common theme that I see is you know, the leadership problem. You have leaders who don't know how to lead. And it's not to their fault, you know. It's not like they're doing anything malicious. It's just that they've grown up in a particular role or a particular industry and they know it really well, but they have never developed the skills of how to lead. You know, I myself struggle as a leader, and my partner Alex is an amazing leader. So I learn a lot from her, and like over our time together of, you know, 7 years and knowing each other for 9 years, she's taught me so much about how to be a leader, and it often has nothing to do with your industry or trade. And so we see that with our clients of the leaders don't have the skills to really engage the employees. And it's not to their fault, it's just that they haven't developed them and, you know, haven't had the resources to develop them. And so I think in culture terms, that's the most reoccurring theme that I see.
Skill set.
Yeah, the leadership skill set, yeah, because it's tough. And I think leaders get a bad rap. You know, if you go on LinkedIn, you can have people that are bashing their leaders because they're a subordinate. Whereas if it was the other way around, if a leader is their job and they need to develop that. But if it was the other way around and a leader was going on, you know, LinkedIn and bashing their subordinate, like that would be completely out of hand. And so I think, you know, leaders get a bad rap where they really just need help, you know. Noe? I think Noe had his hand.
So, 2 questions, but they're related. So what's one of the biggest challenges that you have in your business right now? And then what's probably a very easy challenge that you just keep on maybe pushing back or you know?
I would say the biggest challenge would be client acquisition, like for our target client, you know, just getting into the right circles and things like that. And we also just launched our career search platform. So that's, you know, with being in helping people get jobs for over the last decade, we took all of that real world knowledge and put it into a program. And so finding the right avenues to get people into that program, you know, I honestly like naively thought that it would be so easy. It's like, okay, you make a program and then you run ads and you go to the right events and you do this, and it's like, you know, but it's become more of a challenge than that to get people in. And so I think that's every business owner's biggest challenge is, you know, leads and getting in front of their target market. In terms of an easy challenge that we keep pushing off, I guess like our own internal staff. You know, for us, like it's so easy to find people and so easy to get people that maybe we don't always like go through, you know, the full process that, you know, that maybe we should, because for us it's just not an issue. And so we always wait to the last minute. Like if we expand and get a new client and need to hire somebody, like we always wait till the last minute because we know it'll be easy, but you know, it's never fun to scramble. So
What are some of the specific defined roles of your consultants?
So we have somebody that's really good with employee relations. She's like super sassy, and so like when there's employee conflict, she can really like knock it out and get to the bottom of like who's actually at fault and create a, you know, report and help the company protect themselves, but then also help the employee, you know, grow and protect themselves. And so so she's really good at that. We have, you know, dedicated recruiters. We have dedicated project managers that work with like HR systems. So like that kind of the overview of an HR system for a company. We have people that like really dive into the culture stuff and do the culture sessions for us. So really, like when you think about an HR generalist has like all these different duties. We have kind of a person who has spent their career in one of those duties. as as a consultant. So, yep. Brant?
I know you're being kind of general. I'm wondering if there's a specific niche, certain industries that you've served more than others. And then also, I know you also do some talent development work that you haven't really talked about. What are some of the challenges you're seeing on that side, and how do you support people looking for jobs to really position themselves?
Yeah. So in terms of industry, we mostly work with professional services. So like financial services firms, accounting firms, law firms, engineering firms, marketing firms. We had a client that was in education and salons. We had a client that was in manufacturing. So we've had a few different industries, but the bulk of it has been professional services. And in terms of the challenge with job seekers, so for our program, Career Catalyst, I think that there's a lot of solutions out there, and so people are just hesitant to like, is this solution actually going to work for me? But what our solution does is it's more than just like tailoring your resume, helping with interviewing and all that. It's more about your career journey. So uncovering your career identity, uncovering your unique value proposition, and how you're using that in your resume and in your interviews, and how you're positioning yourself in networking. Because at the end of the day, you need a resume, right? But at the end of the day, so few jobs come from a job application. They mostly come from people or networking or positioning yourself in the right way. And so that's what our program is focused on. It's not, not like a resume writer service. And so I think that's what our biggest challenge has been, is that getting people to understand what we do is more of a career journey service for aligning yourself in front of the right person, as opposed to like writing the right resume that you can spray and pray. I think he had his hand up for a while.
You mentioned that part of what your company does is you help growing companies address the complexity of people management as they scale. Could you kind of give me a better idea of what are some of those challenges that arise as your company grows and expands?
Yeah, I think that the biggest one is like once you hit certain employee marks, your teams are changing and your culture is changing. And so things start to self-manage themselves, is what kind of companies let happen. And that's where you lead to miscommunications and misalignments. And so, a lot of the companies that we work with are somewhere between 10 and 75 employees. And usually when they hit that 30 employee mark, that's where the teams start to change. The manager has new duties that they never had before. They're managing larger teams. They're having to work with larger teams in other departments, and they haven't really seen those departments much, or that department used to be just one person that was easy to talk to, and now it's a whole team. And so what we do is really hone in on, how are the leaders managing their people, how is communication happening, and then using that culture as a tool to identify what would make the communication happen better, and then putting the compliance behind that. So we have a robotics firm in Edo right now that, they're 35 people growing to 50, and they're very much like, we want a flexible culture, we don't want rigid policies, but they still have to have policies in place to protect them and for the employees to understand what the expectations are. And so, we spend a lot of time writing their policies in a way that the policy is just a foundation. It's not something that you hand out for everybody to read and then they follow. It's more of a foundation to keep you compliant, and then you work with your leaders on how to roll it out in your day-to-day behaviors. So that's really what I mean when I say we're working with people systems, is like, how are you on a daily basis managing those behaviors, as opposed to relying on people to read a policy that they're never going to read or probably not going to understand, but you still need the policy in place anyways. Yeah. Now
So I see that everybody's very interested in what you do. Is there a way that you've captured that? And it ties back to what you mentioned about getting people attentive to the resources that you have to find jobs and all that. Is there a way that you've captured that so people can find what you're explaining right now for them to find on your website, or market that in a way?
Yeah, so for the longest time, I hated our website. We homemade it, and you could tell, and it looked horrible. But we didn't have $10,000 to spend on a new website, So I just spent the last 3 weeks rebuilding our website. I'm not a web developer. It was not my skill set, but I have a really good resource that, has office hours that I could attend to pick up new skills and tools on how to redo the website. So I spent 3 or 4 weeks redoing our website that I just launched on Monday. So it's called ChoosePeopleFirst.com. You guys should check it out. But I think it positions our brand better, to answer your question, than what we had in the past. And I'm trying to do more video content on social, so that people can get short form bits of what we actually do and how we help.
We've gotten help recently by some people in the room.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you. And I do have one more question, since we have a little extra time, kind of following up on his question. Since a lot of people aren't at that 10 employee mark yet, what is something that you'd say when you're at 0 or 1, that he said, like how's the best way to go forward building that because you're not at the 10, you're not going to jump from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 or 2 to 10.
Yep.
So what should you be doing when you have the 0, 1, 2, 3
Mm-hmm.
employees? What is something as a small business you should be doing?
Yeah, well, I think that like making sure that you already have everything in place. So right now, as you're working, like be recording what you're doing as a process. That way you can easily delegate. Because what I see when people go to 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, they're most reluctant or scared about like, I don't have time to train this person. And so then they're looking for somebody who's super experienced, right? But that person who's super experienced, you can't afford. And so you have to find, like when we started out, we used a lot of interns. You can find interns that want just the experience. You can find interns, obviously, that are affordable. You can find interns for a capstone project. And so, to put the foundations in place of thinking through, like, if I have to train somebody, how can I do it easily? And be, as you're working, be recording what you do, and be prepared to spend time with that person so that they understand, your culture and how you work. I would say is the best way to get ready to grow.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we do have one more question for you, as always. So how can we, as a community, help you?
I'm trying to get involved in more events, get more involved in the community. I've been in Pearland for 3 years, so I'm trying to, see what events are out there, what ways I can contribute and provide value. So if you guys are heading to, business events, send me an invite.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Let's give him a hand. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.